All right, we're here. We're live. It's season 2, episode 2. This is Libertarian Moms Parenting Porcupines. Today we're going to talk about the crisis cycle and how the news media is making us all crazy. You thought it was the crazies, but it's not. It's actually the media, and we pay them for it. It's going to be fantastic. Here we go. Let's get play the video. And that's an old video of episode 15. StreamYard.
I was thinking that's an interesting name.
Not a whole lot of like behind the scenes, like how does the sausage get made here to bore you guys. But there's a little box of all these video clips I can play, and 2 of them just say parenting porcupines, and I don't know which is which. So I don't know, like one is the beginning and one is the ending, and I'm like, I'll just take a chance here. Clearly, you chose wrong. All right, so here we are, season 2, episode 2, off to a great start. Actually, today's episode is about the crisis cycle, and what we thought we would do is break down how the media gets us all riled up about certain things, and because of the 24-hour news cycle, we stay riled up over and over and over again, and how bad that is for our mental health. And then, of course, how do we talk to our kids? Because we know we're at the end of the cycle when that thing comes around. But first and foremost, who are we? I'm Casey. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina. I have a 12-year-old daughter who is homeschooling because middle school sucks. And so we're trying to do it better than anybody else has ever done it before. Melissa, tell us who you are, where you're at, and who your kids are.
I am in Charleston. I've got a 6-year-old girl, a 7-year-old girl, and a 10-year-old boy. And we start middle school next year, so...
It will suck less by next year. Alex, you're up.
I'm Alex. I'm in Charleston, west of the Ashley, for those of you who are familiar with the hoity-toity terms around here. And I have a 1.5-year-old tiny son, Perry, and I'm just wondering if he'll ever calm down. And that's all.
I'm going to go with no. Who votes no?
As a mom of boys, I can tell you no.
Yeah. Jessica, tell us about your boys.
I'm Jessica, and I'm in Greenville. I'm in the upstate of South Carolina, and I have 2 boys. Jackson is 12. He is in the 6th grade, and Caldwell will be 9 next month, and he's in the 3rd grade.
All right, here we go. Parenting Porcupines season 2, right? And at this point, what we're thinking about in season 2 has been more about planning ahead of time, coming up with topics, trying to like be reasonable and responsible about this kind of thing. And so, I don't know, yesterday I wrote some show notes for today, and those show notes are out on our blog. You can get all of them right now. I put them live ahead of time. So if you're watching live, you can see that, parentingporcupines.com, season 2, episode 2, the crisis cycle. So let's talk about this. Had you heard this term before, the crisis cycle? Did you know when I said to you, like, hey, let's talk about the crisis cycle? Was that like, oh my God, that's so in my vocab? Or were you like, I don't even know what the hell that is? Please provide notes. Melissa?
No.
I mean, I could intuit what it meant, but I've never heard that. I know the grief cycle. That's something
using your context clues like a grown-up.
We do that sometimes, Jessica. Adult. Occasionally.
Yeah.
What did you think, Jessica, when I mentioned like, hey, let's do the crisis cycle? What did you think I was talking about?
Well, I mean, I guess I didn't know what it was, but I, like Melissa, deduced, because I think it has affected me the last year, just with the media, constant negative, the world is ending, apocalyptic news. So that's kind of where my mind went with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I read an article. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to say I sort of knew what you meant, but I think it's because of those like Aaron Sorkin shows. Is that his name? Where like people are walking fast down the hallways. I'm pretty sure they use crisis cycle like in those shows, and I was like, I think that's what she's talking about.
The West Wing thing.
The West Wing, exactly. Yeah. And you guys, we watched so much West Wing last night that when I like all of my dreams, I was in an episode of the West Wing. When I got this morning, I was like, I literally slept not a wink.
Were you tired?
Because I was exhausted. I was in the West Wing all my last night. I was campaigning. I was trying to,
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh.
the last year of my presidency, it was wild. All right, so I did this. So I read an article some time ago that the author said, we're now being told how to talk to our kids about this. And I think it might have been about Black Lives Matter, but it was something that happened in 2020. And what the article was saying was, when we get to the point where the mainstream media is giving us advice on how to talk to our kids about this thing, we've reached a certain place in the crisis cycle. And so I went to Google and I was the crisis cycle, but the article wouldn't come up. And I did what I tell my students to do, which I tried every possible version of this, trying to find this article, and I couldn't, which should be a lesson to everybody to bookmark these kinds of things. And if nothing else, share them so you can find them on your own Twitter feed. But what I think it is that it begins with somebody sort of recognizing that something might be a story, right? This could be a thing. And that hint of a story says, okay, let's do some investigation into it. And then the story actually happens, right? So we've had a prediction and now we have the story actually happening. And so we have the live coverage of the news at the thing that's actually happening. And then afterwards they do this recovery from it, where it's how will we ever get over what just happened? And then the last piece of it is I honestly think let's analyze how we all feel about this. And that may be where the how do you talk to your kids about this thing comes from. But this is not, I'm not a media expert. It's just sort of my observation of I feel like in the 24-hour news cycle, we're constantly being reared up and told to be scared. And then this thing happens. And then we're told how to contextualize it. And then we're told how to emotionally recover from it. And then we get hints at the next thing that's coming. And then we get round up again and we get told how to contextualize it. And then it's and you can never really catch your breath. And I think especially in the previous administration, where we had somebody that was trying to manipulate that cycle and always stay on top of that cycle, it feels exhausting. It's this treadmill of constant crisis. And that's how they keep us engaged. That's how they keep us scrolling. That's how they keep us checking Facebook. And so, Jessica, you mentioned this is how you stay engaged. This is exhausting. Does this wear you out?
Yeah, I mean, I think 2020 wore everybody out, though, right? I mean, because 2020, it did really feel like a cycle. It felt like we were just in this perpetual state of crisis for the whole year, right? And there wasn't just one thing at a time. It was everything all the time. And I think a lot of that was to get ratings, right? Because there was so much going on. Everybody's reporting the same thing. So how can you make this more dynamic to get more viewership? And in making it more dynamic, it makes it more overwhelming. And I think, for me, it's that it's really hard to digest because you don't know what's real. You don't know what's true. You don't know what's completely accurate or what's been skewed. And so it's exhausting. Yeah.
And especially this year, because it was actually affecting us.
Yeah.
I can watch the news and be, oh, there was a hurricane in the South Pacific. Oh, those poor people. But it doesn't affect me. The COVID, that's affecting my life. So it's a different type of news cycle because it actually affects me.
Especially in South Carolina. I feel I don't know if it's just because, we're biased, so we look for the word South Carolina in the media, but I feel we were picked on a little bit. And I was ew, I don't want to read about South Carolina in national news. So it felt a little personal.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have an anti-national news scenario anyway. And Alex, your husband, Sean, is our state party chair. And he and I have been talking a lot about how do we get our SCLP blog to reflect more of what's happening in South Carolina? How do we focus more on the local news? But to Melissa's point, the national piece feels very local right now because they're talking about vaccinations and how do we give out the vaccinations? And they were talking about COVID cases and how many COVID cases do we have? And then we put our state up against these other states. And as much as we're libertarians and we're for individual freedom, then we're okay, then the counties and then the states and then the feds, right? But it seems all this year, it's been so much federal that I've I don't know if I'm immune or numb to it, but I'm frustrated by it, and I feel like more oppressed than I have in previous years because all I'm hearing about is the federal, and because, to Melissa's point, it's the federal matters to me on the daily basis. It's right in front of me every day. Deep breath.
Yeah, that's a lot to think about.
All right, so we know the media companies are paid by how much attention they can get. They're paid by likes and clicks and how engaged we stay with them. And so they're going to build this crisis cycle because they want to tell, to Jessica's point, they want to tell, they're all telling the same story, but they want to tell the story in a way that holds their viewers to them and keeps their viewers local to them. So Jessica, do you think it's the analysis piece in terms of them putting it into context and telling us what we should think about it? Do you think that's the most exhausting part? Or do you think it's just because lately we've been really frustrated with NBC, where we've always thought Lester Holt was a good guy and we're just watching the news here. But lately I'm like, Lester, dude, come on, like pull it back a little bit. Stop trying to be our leader, friend. You're just the news guy. Just tell us what it's like. So do you think it's the context piece, or do you think it's the actual news, like the facts that are coming at us?
Well, I think it's the latter, but I don't think it's the facts that are coming at us, because I don't think that they're entirely factual.
Ooh.
Burn.
And so I think that's the part that to me is so overwhelming, because when I'm watching this, because I want to know what's going on. And you guys know, we watch the news in our house. We talk to our kids about what's going on. We want them to be informed as children can be, within reason. So I want to know what's going on so that I can talk to them about what's going on. But it's hard to do that when what we're being told may not necessarily be the truth. And so I think for me, that's the part that's so overwhelming, is having to then go and figure out if the news is actually the news or if it's mostly opinion or skewed by it. Yeah. So
our friend Casey Crow in the party, he is really, really good at taking different pieces of news from different places and then splicing them together and coming out with the truth, And I've thought about asking him if he would be like our SCLP like news anchor, because he's very good at it, and it's not a gift of mine. Maybe he would do that for us.
Maybe.
It's funny that you say that. That's a curator job, right? And so think of it like museums.
That's right.
Museums, when they put together, here's the exhibit of, natural history from, whatever. It's a curator that does that says what's important, what do we keep, and what do we get rid of. So I think that's Jessica, I think you're hitting on something important here, because you're talking about what do we show our kids. So Melissa, I want you to jump in on this too. Like, how do you, when you think about like, how do you position this for your children? Do they get the straight news and you try to contextualize it for them? Do you wait for the media to say, here's how to talk about your kids? And you go, thank you, media. No? What? Those articles are you can legit, I'm not kidding you guys, Google how to talk to your kids about ... and every possible subject will come up.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
What do you think, Melissa? Is that the cue for you? Like, how do you do it? How do you put it into context for them?
Really? My kids have very little idea what's going on a day-to-day basis.
Good for them.
The girls are 6 and 7, and my 6-year-old just turned 6. So, and we don't watch the nightly news. We read our news, sometimes listen to the radio, but I've stopped doing that this year because it's all opinion, and I can't stand it. I can't take it. I don't want to hear your opinion. I just want to hear what happened. Just tell me what happened and leave it alone. But I found some news sources that I get daily emails, and it's lovely. So what, 1440, like 1440, and the new paper, there's no opinion, no nothing. It's this happened.
I love the new paper.
Here are some links to source material to check our facts. And it's
But let's
lovely.
talk about that though, because the new paper, I get the new paper too, and it's curated, right? So
Yes.
this is
yes, what they choose to,
Yeah.
it's an editor that's looking for it. So I also get a paper called Morning Brew, which is like all my students are who recommended this to me. It's like Wall Street and businesses and stuff like that. And I also get Cola Daily, which is supposed to be focused on what's happening in Colombia. So I try to get like these 3 or 4 different email newsletters and try to sort of piece through them. Interestingly, the new paper comes last. So I end up with Morning Brew first, and I get Cola Daily shortly thereafter, and then new paper comes after that. And sometimes it ends up being a recap of what I've already seen in these previous 2. So to me, it's about like, let's get all the resources we can. But to Jessica's point about turning on the nightly news, you don't have time for that. They all come on at the same time, right? And so which anchors do you trust, and which Vinions, right? Your views and opinions, which Vinions are you willing to put up with here as they're delivering it to you? Because when they get to editorial on it, and when they're only showing us clearly what they think is their version of the news, the slant to it, I get frustrated by that. Are any of you guys Doomsday Scrollers? Did you know this term before I put it in our show notes?
No.
Reader's Digest put this out there, which makes me think that if my papa was still alive, he would have known this term before I did. Because it would have been in his Reader's Digest.
I do like Reader's Digest. I must say that.
So this is a Reader's Digest thing. And what they say is doom scrolling. It's called doom scrolling. It's a compound word, doom scrolling. And it means to scroll through your social media and newsfeed looking for basically the gloomiest headlines. And we get, according to this article and some of the research that they cite, human beings get addicted to this for a number of reasons, primarily because we like to see, we want to feel informed, right? To Jessica's point, we want to feel informed. And so we think, well, we're reading the news, therefore we are informed. It's CNN, it's Fox News, it's Al Qaeda. Who knows? Not Al Qaeda. What's it? Al Jazeera.
Yeah.
Cool. Not Al Qaeda. Al Jazeera.
Well, different.
We were live, I could edit that shit out, but I can't. So we'll just go with Al Jazeera.
And just like that, our podcast was shut down.
Yeah. Here comes the NSA.
We burned bright, y'all. Burned bright.
For a while there, Al Jazeera English was my homepage. I don't know if you guys remember a guy named Jeffrey Redding. I think that was his name, Jeffrey Redding. He was on The Daily Show. He had been a Marine in the U.S., obviously the U.S. Marine Corps, and he served in the communications office during the Gulf War in the 2002, 2003 timeframe. And they did a documentary on him called Control Room, where they talked about how the Bush administration was controlling the narrative associated with what was happening with the invasion of Iraq after we have Colin Powell going to the UN and all that sort of thing. Fantastic documentary, just front and center, fantastic documentary. But he is the main character of this documentary, and you watch him go through where he believes it. He believes the message, and over the course of time, he's starting to realize he's being used, he's being manipulated. And anyway, when he left, when he was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps, he took a job at Al Jazeera English in Washington, D.C., and he was heading up Al Jazeera, which of course is from the United Arab Emirates. It's meant to be an international news station, and he was heading it up in the D.C. area. And I read his book, and I loved him, and I thought, like, man, this is a good guy. I'm going to follow him. But then, of course, I'm sure I'm on an NSA watch list because of that. But the idea was to, like, bring in as many resources as I can, as many sources of news as I can, and try to understand them all. But that just gets exhausting. Who's your primary, Jessica? Who do you listen to more than anybody else?
I've always liked Lester Holt. I like to watch the nightly news because I've always felt like he's been the least likely to spin things. Yeah, so that's my favorite. We watch our local news though, and they do a pretty good job on our local news. WYFF4 here in the upstate, they're usually really good about sticking to facts, I think. Yeah, but then there are the sources like, sorry, Casey, your love, Chuck Todd.
Cut out my heart and throw it to the dogs. Chuck Todd and I are going to have to break up. I mean, I really have always loved him. I really have. And I loved when he took over for that show. I was like, yay, Gen X, get a Gen Xer in that seat. And then he has just, I mean, he's just broken my heart over and over and over again. Yeah. He's a federalist. He's a big time federalist. Yeah. He wants national policies. I mean, it's kooky dukes.
Yeah.
So just to like try to pull it back, because I know we could like ramble on about Chuck. I could. That's forever.
I had to look him up. Sorry.
Let's go back to the doom scrolling though. So Alex, do you do this doom scrolling thing? Are you on social media? Are you like following the doom scrolling scenario?
I mean, I know what you're talking about. I know what the article's talking about. So like I have a friend who I dearly hope actually does not listen to this, or maybe if she does, she will hear it, and it'll be my roundabout way of talking to her about it.
So your way of friends with our passive aggressive podcast.
Sorry, I won't say a name. I'll try not to. She didn't used to be partisan, and then when Donald Trump became president, she moved far, far, far left. And now we get together, and talking to her is like hearing CNN headlines, because all she does is watch CNN. And y'all, like, I thought that was something that was reserved for our parents. I did not know that people our age left CNN on. So she just spouts off the CNN headlines, and I want to like shake her and be like, I miss connecting with you as a person. You're not a talking head. Stop this. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like it's really sad to see that happen, because we're so much more than politics and all the, oh my gosh, all the poop. I almost said the S word, which, you know, I try not to say it too much. We're so much more than the poop that they put out. So like, it's so awful, and we're just made for more, and it makes me really sad. So I try not to do it.
The FCC is not monitoring our YouTube channel, right?
It's just a personal,
it's going to be okay.
It's okay. We probably say it enough for you, Alex. Yes, between Casey and I'm sure.
Say it.
It's not one of my favorite cuss words. I'm a big fan of the F-bomb, but I usually go with garbage instead of the S word. But that's really funny. Although someday I'll tell you the story about how the S word got me kicked out of book club.
Oh,
Melissa,
yes,
do you do this doom scrolling scenario?
I do not, but I can tell, you can tell, I can tell, you can tell, everybody can tell. The people that do this, in a lot of the parenting groups, they talk about, oh my God, this guy followed us around and was going to snatch my children. And, oh, you can't leave your kids alone for 5 minutes because everybody's going around kidnapping kids and snatching. No, they're not. They're just stories all over social media. I'm like, it's not happening. Your perception of reality is so warped because all you read is bad news, and it's really hurting our children, because we have a whole generation in their 20s now with anxiety disorders, and they can't leave their house, and they can't have relationships because everybody's out to get them, and they can't function. And it's horrible.
Yeah,
agreed.
That's exactly the point I want to get out here, because I have some cousins in their 20s, and I can't figure out where their anxiety comes from, because they were raised in good neighborhoods, safe neighborhoods with good, decent, moral parents. Like, why are you so afraid of everything on the planet? But this article that talks about that doom scrolling brings it to my attention. And one of I know we all watch or listen to the podcast Words and Numbers. And one of the things that Anthony said was the news media is meant to bring forward the fantastic and the unusual, right? The out of the ordinary. And so if you're seeing this as the fantastic and the out of the ordinary, a kid got kidnapped. Oh my God, right? Except that if you're seeing it every day, multiple times a day, it doesn't feel fantastic and ordinary. Or extraordinary. It feels like this is how the world is. And so seeing that doom scrolling really does skew our perspective of how life actually is. But don't worry. We've been given advice on how to talk to our kids about doom scrolling.
Thank goodness.
We're ready to protect ourselves and them. What should we do? And there's these articles about it, like, what should we do? And interestingly, this is the debate that I got into with, and I know he doesn't watch the show, so it's not going to matter, but my dad and I, my dad, I think I have shared with you guys, was an early adopter of QAnon and an early proponent of Donald Trump and the Make America Great movement and all this sort of thing. And I'm not going to pass judgment this week on that because I haven't had enough to drink. But I'm going to say that when he and I talk about how concerned he is for my child, for our future, and the global scenario that we're experiencing, I just keep giving him the same advice that showed up in this How to Talk to Your Kids article. So how to talk to your parents about this may also apply, which is go out into your community and meet your neighbors and meet the people that are running your city council and meet the people that are running your local businesses and become friends, face-to-face friends, even with a mask on, with these people. And you'll see that the majority of the world is just doing what they need to do. They're not kidnapping children and trying to overthrow our government. They're just getting by, right? Like, the majority of the people are generally nice people. They're good people. They'll open the door in South Carolina. They will open the door for you as you go into the gas station. They'll say hello to you as you walk across the parking lot. I mean, we make eye contact in the grocery store. We say, excuse me, when we step in front of each other. Like, the majority of people in my community are really good people. So I don't feel scared about the future. The doom scrolling hasn't gotten to me, but maybe that's because I did the other piece of advice, which we'll get to in just a second. So Jessica, what do you think? Go out into your community, meet your people. Is this the advice you would give my dad and other baby boomers and doomsday people who feel like the world is ending because they are doom scrolling addicts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair advice. Yeah. Stop scrolling. Just stop. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's the other thing. So the other piece of advice is to limit your time on the scrolling, right?
Yeah.
2.5 hours is what they said.
Yeah.
Per day.
Per day.
Limit it to
Still
2.5
a lot.
hours.
I think if you're going to invest the time in seeking out news and sources and articles and things, I think maybe look intentionally and, mindfully look for things that are outside of your echo chamber. Maybe things that are from other points of view and other areas. Like maybe for us in South Carolina, maybe looking for things that are coming from other places to see what's happening in other places, because it's good sometimes to get outside of your echo chamber because that can help you see a bigger picture. So
that is why I started following Al Jazeera on Twitter, is because they're global news. So now I'm seeing what's happening in Chile and Argentina and Ghana and all these other countries that are not U.S. focused. They're not U.S. centered. They quite frankly don't care what we're doing in the U.S. And that put into perspective for me this crisis cycle of news that was, especially now with COVID, where it's, this is how many people have died today. And this is how big this pandemic is. And this is the hospital capacity that we have. And the way that that specific story has made us all feel like we should be afraid and we should be scared to hug our friends and spend time with our friends and go into the homes of our friends because we don't know where they've been or what they've done.
And that's a media choice too. Because the rest of the world has not covered it the way the American media has. The American media has covered it to scare us. The other countries' news is not all doom and gloom all the time about the COVID. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Talk more about that. Why do you think that is? Why does our media go to the doom and gloom? Why do they do that?
Because if it bleeds, it leads. It makes money. Because we doom scroll.
That was awesome.
So the worse the news, the better for the news companies.
It's the business model, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I have
Because
another
if people
opinion.
are scared, they watch all day long to hear what's next. What do I do? I don't know. What do I do? I don't know. I'm scared. I'm going to keep watching until you tell me what to do.
Yeah, I
Call
think
me,
there's part of the clickbait piece. Go ahead, Alex.
call me a libertarian conspiracy theorist. I'll answer to that. That's fine. But I truly believe that. So when you look at the media conglomerates and who's at the top, and you look at the politicians and you see that they're like besties and stuff, I think this is just another way that our government wants to make us enemies, and it wants to be our bestie, right? So like you can't trust your neighbor next door because they might have the COVID, but you can trust us because we're going to take care of you. And it's just another way that our government wants to be our God and our mom and our dad, and it's disgusting.
I would agree with that.
I think it comes out of and this week in homeschool, Holly's working on totalitarianism. And the concept of totalitarianism is that the single source for everything, faith, retail, government, military, everything, that single source is a single source. And we keep moving closer to that. The more people look to government for answers rather than looking to their community and to their neighbors for compassion, I think that's the danger. And we've been traveling that highway for some time. And to Alex's point, as we look at who benefits from it, where are the profits for that? Follow the money. And when you find the people who are making money off of this fear, you'll find why the fear is being built up as big as it is.
Yeah.
Ah, that's so sad. How can we get back to a happier note before we end our live broadcast? So last week, the happier note was like, what did you tell your kids? And I was like, I told them they're crazy. Those people crazy.
You did sound like that.
No, you're right. Well, it depends on which version.
Well, my kids, because we do watch the news. And so my kids are very curious, and we talk about, all of these things. And so, I think it's important that we as parents, if our children are consuming this and, at the same time, that we're talking to them about it at the same time. And we're not letting them process it by themselves, because it is a lot. I mean, that's a lot, and having conversations about, they're reporting these numbers. This is what that means. So maybe they're reporting it this way, but it might not be quite as bad as it sounds if you take all of these things into consideration. Right. Or, that's true of whatever they're reporting. I can't think of another example. I can't think of specific examples, but
no, you're fine.
But having those conversations, and just helping them think through it and seeing a bigger picture outside of that immediate source and that immediate piece of information. And then it's not as overwhelming for them either. And I think
that's what also prevent that anxiety that Casey was talking about. Because they see that, even though I'm being fed this information, I can, like, my mom is teaching me to think for myself outside of that. So I don't have to be anxious. I can come up with my own narrative, my own truth from this. And it can be a positive truth. Like, I know that you teach your kids. So that's cool. Good job, Jeff.
You guys are so crazy smart. So we've been talking about it in the terms of storytelling. And you guys know I'm a fiction writer, so Holly and I talk a lot about how is the story built? How do they get interest? How do you do something mean to your character to make the story more interesting, right? And so we break down the news media as they're telling a story, and they want us to be engaged in the story, and we're being entertained by the story. And so let's think of it in that fact. So when we go back to like Jessica and Melissa saying, like, I just want the facts, just tell me what's going on. But that's not what we're being given. We're being given entertainment. We're being given a story, and they write the story in the way that they think we're going to most be entertained by it. And so that's how Holly and I are putting it in the context, is like, this is a story. So who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist? Why are they telling it this way? What reaction are they trying to get from you? What do you think the outcome is going to be? So we're using that sort of like English narrative. And by English, I mean like your English class, your storytelling class, to figure that out. What do you think, Melissa? How do you put this in context for your kids?
I like the way you do it with the who's telling the story and why do they choose this story over that story, or emphasize these numbers over those numbers. I like that because yes. So when my children start following the news, I like that tactic. My son asks questions sometimes because I'll listen to on the news on the radio. So he'll just ask questions and I'll just explain. It's usually just historical context. Like why does that person do that? Oh, well, let me tell you a story.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, and that's honestly how we learn best is through that storytelling piece, right? And so do we learn, to Alex's point, do we learn to be afraid, or do we learn to be mistrustful, or do we learn to trust ourselves and our own ability to recognize what's being said to us as true or coming from an angle for a particular reason? All right, we're 36 minutes at it, so I'm going to go ahead and close it off and say thanks, ladies. This was a great discussion this week.
Before we go,
yeah.
Casey's going to be so pissed off at me right now, but she mentioned that she's a fiction writer, guys. This is her book.
Your book, it's awesome.
After December, go buy it. You can buy it on Amazon or any retailer. Go buy Casey's book.
It's really good.
Do it.
If you decide to make my book part of your book club, I will send you one of these cool hand-painted After December wine glasses. And I will appear via Zoom with your book club, which I just did this past weekend. I'll tell you guys about it offline. But yeah, thank you, Jessica. The book, absolutely. Fiction is my jam. So, storytelling, that's what I do. Thank you guys for being part of this. Thank you to all of our friends who support us on Parenting Porcupines. I'm going to try to get the right branding video here to close us out and see if it's
shot
the way I expected. It might. Fingers crossed.